Somewhere in Amarillo, Texas, a steak weighing more than 4 pounds is sizzling over an open grill. It weighs 72 ounces, about 4.5 pounds, or just over 2 kilograms of beef. Put it on a normal dinner plate, and it barely looks like dinner anymore. It looks more like a piece of meat, meant for an entire table. But at the Big Texan Steak Ranch, one person is expected to eat the whole thing, and the steak is only the beginning. Sitting beside it are a baked potato, shrimp cocktail, salad, a bread roll, and butter. Then there is one final ingredient, a clock. You have exactly 60 minutes. Finish everything according to the challenge rules, and your meal is free. Fail, and the $72 dinner is yours to pay for. It sounds simple when you read the rules, but sitting in front of more than 2 kilograms of steak, while strangers watch you and a giant clock counts down, is something very different. At the beginning, challengers often look confident. Some laugh, some pose for photographs. Friends stand nearby with phones ready. Then the eating starts. The steak slowly gets colder. The chewing gets harder. The clock keeps moving. And eventually, many challengers reach the same realization. There is still an enormous amount of food left. According to statistics published by the Big Texan, tens of thousands of people have attempted the challenge over its long history, while only a small minority have finished successfully. And yet, people continue to come. They travel across Texas. They stop while driving across America. Some even arrive with the 72-ounce challenge specifically on their bucket list, which raises a strange question. Why would so many people voluntarily attempt a meal they are overwhelmingly likely to lose? Why has something designed to overwhelm the human appetite become one of the most famous steak challenges in America? To understand that, we have to go back more than 6 decades to Route 66, Texas cattle country, and a group of hungry cowboys. The story begins in Amarillo in 1960s. That year, R.J. Bob Lee opened the Big Texan Steak Ranch along historic Route 66. This was an important location. For decades, Route 66 carried travelers west across America, connecting small towns, roadside motels, diners, gas stations, and attractions stretching from Chicago toward California. And when travelers reached the Texas Panhandle, the Big Texan offered them something unmistakably Texan. Beef, cowboys, Western decoration, big signs, and portions that were difficult to ignore. From the beginning, the restaurant understood something that roadside businesses across America had learned very well. Travelers don't just want somewhere to eat, they want something to remember. And according to the story told by the Big Texan, local cowboys helped provide exactly that. Workers from nearby stockyards would come into the restaurant with enormous appetites. They were men accustomed to physical work and, apparently, more than willing to compete over who could eat the most. Eventually, Bob Lee turned that appetite into entertainment. Tables were brought together, steaks were served, and the men competed to see how much they could eat within an hour. One contestant kept going. He ate steak after steak. Along the way came the side dishes, shrimp cocktail, salad, baked potato, and bread. When the hour was finally over, the amount of steak he had eaten totaled 4.5 pounds, 72 ounces. That number became the foundation of a legend. Lee reportedly declared that anyone who could repeat the feat, consuming the same amount of steak along with the required sides within 1 hour, would receive the meal for free. And the 72-ounce steak challenge was born. A cowboy eating contest became a challenge. The challenge became entertainment, and the entertainment became part of the identity of the restaurant itself. It was a remarkably effective idea. A normal steak dinner ends when the customer pays the check and walks away. The Buy Me High 2-ounce challenge creates a story. Someone wins, someone fails. People gather around, strangers cheer, and decades later, somebody still tells the story about the day they tried to eat a 4.5-pound steak in Texas. But there is something the giant roadside signs cannot fully communicate. Seeing 72 ounces written on a billboard is one thing. Seeing 72 ounces of beef sitting directly in front of you is another. Because once the challenge begins, you discover something important. The steak is not the only problem. To understand why this challenge defeats so many people, start with the obvious problem. The steak itself, 72 ounces equals 4.5 pounds, or approximately 2.04 kilograms of beef. Consider an 8-ounce steak. For many diners, that's already a complete main course. The Big Texan Challenge gives you the equivalent weight of roughly 9 of those steaks. For one person, in one sitting. In 1 hour. And this isn't ground beef that can be broken apart easily. The challenge uses top sirloin. That means cutting, chewing, swallowing, again and again. At first, that might not sound so terrible. You're hungry. The steak smells good. The first bite tastes like exactly what you came to Texas for. But appetite is temporary. The steak is not. And this is where many people misunderstand the challenge. You do not win simply by finishing the 72 ounces of beef. The entire meal has to disappear. That includes shrimp cocktail, a baked potato, salad, a bread roll, and butter. Those foods look almost irrelevant when photographed next to the enormous steak. But once the challenge begins, they become strategically important. Imagine reaching the point where your body is already telling you that it has had enough beef. Then you look down. There is still a baked potato waiting. A potato that seemed harmless 30 minutes ago can suddenly feel enormous. Then there is bread. Bread requires chewing, absorbs moisture, and takes up more space. Then salad, then shrimp. Every bite takes time. Every bite occupies stomach capacity that could otherwise have gone toward the steak. This creates one of the great deceptions of the challenge. The steak gets all the attention. The side dishes help finish you off. There is also another enemy, temperature. A giant steak doesn't remain perfectly hot and juicy forever. As time passes, the meat cools, fat changes texture. The eating experience becomes less pleasant. What started as a steak dinner slowly transforms into a mechanical task. Cut, chew, swallow, repeat. And because this is a time challenge, eating slowly and enjoying the food is not really an option. The clock changes your relationship with the meal. Normally, if you're full, you stop. Here, being full simply means you have reached the difficult part. And that difficult part often arrives surprisingly early. Imagine sitting down in front of the challenge. The clock begins. 60 L. During the first 10 minutes, everything feels possible. The crowd is excited. Your friends are filming. Adrenaline is high. You start cutting aggressively through the steak. Maybe you've skipped breakfast. Maybe you've prepared for days. Maybe you've watched videos online and developed a strategy. You tell yourself, I can do this. At 50 minutes remaining, the steak is smaller, but not small. And now you've already consumed more food than many people would eat during an entire large dinner. Between 10 and 20 minutes, reality starts arriving. Your jaw has been working almost constantly. The flavor that was exciting in the first few bites is becoming repetitive. Your stomach is filling. You look at the clock, then you look at the steak. For the first time, you begin calculating rather than eating. How much have I finished? How much is left? How quickly do I need to eat? Then somewhere around the middle of the challenge, many people encounter what competitive eaters sometimes describe simply as a wall. Your body doesn't care about the prize. It doesn't care that people are cheering. It doesn't care that you drove hundreds of miles to be here. It sends one very clear message: stop eating. And now the psychological battle begins. The steak no longer looks delicious. It looks like work. The potato that once looked small suddenly seems ridiculous. The bread becomes something you wish had never been invented. And the clock keeps moving. 30 minutes, 25, 20. At this point, challengers may start negotiating with themselves. One more bite. One more piece. Finish this section first. Maybe save the potato until the end. Maybe change the rhythm. But there is a brutal mathematical problem. The slower you become, the faster the remaining food seems to grow. Then come the final minutes. People around you may begin counting. Your friends may be shouting, you can see the finish line. But seeing it and reaching it are very different things. Finally, 0000. For a small percentage of challengers, that moment means victory. For everyone else, it means the same thing. The steak won. And statistically, the steak wins a lot. The numbers reveal just how difficult this challenge really is. In statistics published by the Big Texan and updated in late 2025, the restaurant listed 99,208 recorded attempts. Successful attempts, 10,631. The restaurant lists the overall success rate at approximately 12%. Think about that. Imagine Motamti people walking into the restaurant convinced that they have what it takes. When the challenge is over, roughly 12 are successful. The overwhelming majority are not. And that actually makes the challenge more powerful, because difficulty creates status. If half the restaurant could finish it, winning wouldn't mean much. If nearly everyone could finish it, nobody would travel to Amarillo just to prove they could do it. But when the success rate is around 12%, the challenge begins to feel like a test. You aren't simply ordering dinner. You're gambling on yourself, your appetite, your strategy, your tolerance, your ability to continue when every signal from your body tells you to stop. But even these numbers don't prepare you for the strangest part of the Big Texan story. Because while most people struggle to finish one meal in an hour, one woman made the challenge look almost absurdly easy. Her name is Schuyler. If you had never heard of Schuyler and saw her sitting next to an average challenger, you might not immediately predict what was about to happen. She is not physically enormous. She doesn't look like someone who should be capable of making more than 2 kilograms of steak disappear in minutes. But Molly is not a normal restaurant customer. She's a competitive eater, and when elite competitive eaters attack food challenges, the rules of what seems physically reasonable suddenly become very different. The Big Texan currently credits Schuyler with the fastest completion of a single 72-ounce steak challenge. 4 minutes and 22 seconds. Think about what that means. Most challengers receive an entire hour. Some spend half that hour simply discovering how impossible the task feels. Schuyler finished before many restaurant customers could comfortably eat an appetizer. But even that isn't the most unbelievable part. In 2016, Schuyler returned for something even more extreme. She consumed 3 complete 72-ounce steak challenge meals in approximately 20 minutes. 3. Just the steaks totaled 216 ounces, 13.5 pounds, more than 6 kilograms of beef, and that doesn't include the required side dishes. After spending several minutes explaining why one 72-ounce dinner can overwhelm an ordinary person's appetite, watching someone consume 3 of them almost breaks the scale of the story. And that's exactly why Schuyler's performance matters. She provides the perfect interruption. Just when the challenge seems nearly impossible, somebody appears and demonstrates that the outer limits of competitive eating are far beyond what most of us can imagine. But her achievement should not fool anyone into thinking the challenge is easy. If anything, it shows the opposite. Competitive eaters train specifically for this kind of event. They develop pacing, swallowing techniques, food management strategies, and an understanding of their own physical limits. A tourist walking in because his friends told him he eats a lot is playing an entirely different game. And that difference helps explain why the challenge keeps producing the same result: a few legends, and a very large number of defeated dinners. Yet this leads us back to the original mystery. If most people know they are probably going to lose, why do they keep sitting down? The obvious answer is free food. Finish the meal, and you don't pay for it. But economically, that explanation makes very little sense. Nobody needs to consume more than 4 pounds of steak to save $72. There are much easier ways to get dinner. The real prize isn't the steak, it's the story. Imagine returning home and telling your friends, "I ate at the Big Texan. That's interesting." Now compare it with, "I beat the 72-ounce steak challenge." That's completely different. The challenge gives people something food normally cannot provide: a measurable victory. There is a clock. There are rules. There is a clear winner and loser. And that transforms dinner into competition. The public setting amplifies everything. The Big Texan has long understood that the people attempting the challenge are not just customers, they are performers. Other diners can watch. Strangers cheer for people they met 5 minutes earlier. Phones come out. Videos are recorded. People begin rooting for someone simply because there is a giant piece of meat, a countdown clock, and a possibility of disaster. That spectacle creates another unusual feature. Even losing can be entertaining. Imagine failing with 8 ounces left. You'll probably remember it for years. Your friends certainly will. Maybe they'll never let you forget it. And strangely, that's still valuable. You don't need to win the challenge to get a story from it. You only need to try. This changes the economics of failure. In most competitions, Losing reduces the experience. At the Big Texan, failure can become part of the attraction. I tried it and got destroyed. That's still a story worth telling. And every person who tells that story becomes an advertisement for the next person who thinks, yeah, but I could probably do it. On the surface, the business proposition seems strange. A restaurant buys an enormous steak, cooks it, adds several side dishes, serves it to a customer, and if that customer succeeds, the restaurant gives it away. Why? Because the free meal is not really the product. The spectacle is. Consider what happens whenever someone takes the challenge. The challenger may bring friends or family. Those people order food. Other diners watch. People take pictures. Someone posts the attempt online. Maybe the video reaches thousands of viewers, maybe millions. Travel programs have featured the challenge. Food personalities have attempted it. Competitive eaters have turned it into record-breaking performances. In 2008, Man vs. Food helped introduce the challenge to another generation of viewers. And now, social media can transform a single attempt into advertising that travels far beyond Amarillo. The result is a remarkable cycle. A meal becomes a challenge. The challenge becomes entertainment. The entertainment becomes content. The content becomes tourism. And the tourists buy more meals. Viewed this way, giving away a few successful steak dinners isn't necessarily a loss. It can be a marketing expense. Meanwhile, most challengers don't finish. They pay for the meal. And even many of those people leave satisfied, not because they defeated the steak, but because they participated in something famous. That's the difference between selling food and selling an experience. A normal steakhouse sells you a steak. The Big Texan can sell you a story about yourself. And then there is Texas itself. The 72-ounce steak challenge didn't become famous in spite of its excess. It became famous because of it. Texas has spent generations developing a cultural image built around scale. Big ranches, big cattle, big trucks, big skies, big personalities, and, of course, big beef. Not every Texan lives like a cowboy. Not every Texan eats enormous steaks. But cultural symbols don't have to represent ordinary daily life. They represent an idea. And the idea behind the Big Texan is instantly recognizable. Go big or go home. This is also why the restaurant's connection to Route 66 matters. The old American highway wasn't merely transportation. It became a collection of experiences. Giant roadside signs, unusual motels, oversized statues, dinosaurs, neon, restaurants that promised something you couldn't find back home. Travelers weren't only moving between destinations. The road itself was part of the adventure. The Big Texan fit perfectly into that world. If you're driving through Texas, why eat a steak you could order anywhere? Why not see the enormous one? Why not watch someone attempt it? Why not try it yourself? The same idea appears throughout Texas food culture. Consider barbecue. A giant beef rib isn't interesting only because of flavor. Its size creates spectacle. A smoker filled with dozens of briskets becomes visually impressive before anyone takes a bite. A line stretching outside a famous barbecue joint turns lunch into an event. Texas has an extraordinary ability to transform meat into theater. And at the Big Texan, the theater happens around one enormous steak and a 60-minute clock. What began as a local eating competition survived because it evolved with American culture. First came the cowboys. Then Route 66 travelers. The restaurant itself grew and changed locations as Amarillo and the interstate system changed around it. By the late 1970s, challengers were being placed where other diners could watch them more easily. That was an important evolution. The challenge wasn't hidden away. It became part of the show. Then television arrived. Travel programming turned local restaurants into national destinations. A person watching from hundreds or thousands of miles away could suddenly see the giant steak for themselves. Then came food television, then YouTube, then social media. And each new form of media was almost perfectly suited to the Big Texan challenge. The concept requires almost no explanation. Here is a giant steak. Here is one person. Here is a clock. Can they finish? You understand the story in seconds. That simplicity has helped a roadside promotion from the early 1960s survive into the age of viral video. The challenge has become something larger than a restaurant promotion. It has become part of American food folklore, and perhaps that's why the word challenge matters more than the word steak. Now look at the meal one more time. A 72-ounce top sirloin, shrimp cocktail, salad, a baked potato, bread, butter, and 60 minutes. At the beginning of this story, it looked ridiculous. Now it makes a little more sense. The Big Texan Steak Challenge is a legend because it carries more than 6 decades of history. It connects modern tourists with Route 66, Texas cattle culture, cowboy mythology, and an era when roadside America competed for attention with increasingly outrageous attractions. It has produced unforgettable winners, competitive eating records, television appearances, and tens of thousands of stories. But it is also a nightmare, because more than 2 kilograms of steak is still more than 2 kilograms of steak, and the steak isn't even the whole meal. Your jaw gets tired, your stomach fills, the food gets colder, the clock gets smaller. And eventually, most challengers discover why the success rate remains so low. But maybe failure is not a flaw in the challenge. Maybe failure is the secret that keeps it alive. If everyone could finish the meal, there would be no legend. Nobody would drive across Texas to prove they could do something ordinary. Nobody would gather around the table. Nobody would count down the final seconds. Nobody would care. The possibility of failure creates the drama. And every defeated challenger makes the next confident tourist wonder whether they might somehow be different. Maybe I prepared better. Maybe I'm hungrier. Maybe I can eat faster. Maybe I'm one of the 12%. And that may be the real reason the Big Texan Challenge has survived for more than 60 years. It sits perfectly between two thoughts. I think I can do this. And this might be a terrible idea. Let me know in the comments.